fire glowed amid the smoke. Mount Doom was burning, and a great reek rising. Then at last his gaze was held, wall upon wall, battlement upon battlement, black, immeasurably strong, mountain of iron, gate of steel, tower of adamant he saw it. Barad-dûr, fortress of Sauron. All hope left him.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. This week we are reading Book 2, Chapter 10 of Fellowship of the Ring, The Breaking of the Fellowship. And my name is Logan.
My name is Zach. And here we are, Logan, at the end of this first volume. I'm glad you're with me.
I know. I feel sad.
I can't believe we're at the end of Fellowship already. A third of the way through the project.
Is this episode 22 that we're recording right now?
It is.
Wow.
Which means that we have been talking about Lord of the Rings on the internet for more than an entire day at this point. You could listen to us have a conversation about Lord of the Rings over a full 26, 27 hour period. I think we've all really accomplished something together here. A third of the way through the project. It's pretty cool.
I went and listened to a little bit of episode 1.
Oh boy, how was it?
It wasn't as rough as I thought it might be.
Okay, well that's good to know.
But we've definitely learned some things in the process, which is kind of cool to hear.
Well, if you've stuck with us from day one, appreciate it, and excited to continue to read this together.
Absolutely.
This chapter's a tough read. I mean, it's fast moving compared to the last two chapters, I would say. There's definitely this sense that everything has been leading up to this moment. You know, they're finally to the point of being forced to make the decision that they've been debating, this long debate they've had. But it's really hard for me to see Boromir slip into madness like this. It was really emotional for me to read through, because as bad of a decision as Boromir makes, and as, horrendous his treatment of Frodo is in this chapter, I think both of us really genuinely love Boromir.
Yes. I think if the Fellowship could have stayed together and Boromir was the kind of guy who would have gone along to Mordor.
Yeah.
He just solves a lot of problems because he's this hard-charging person.
Yeah.
He's got a plan. He's resourceful. He is not an easy person to kind of keep down. He doesn't get discouraged.
Yeah.
Really. And there are parts of Boromir that, at his best, are so... I'm trying to avoid the word useful, but
yeah,
he is he's this useful person to have around.
Yeah.
But the sort of bro-y chuck nuts part of him, I really don't love it. I don't love it.
No.
And his nationalism around, his people and Gondor and stuff all feels pretty, I don't know, especially these days. Maybe you want to cut that line out, but feels pretty rotten. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like in the past I've always been really disdainful of Boromir.
Mm-hmm.
And in this reading, and maybe it's because I'm older reading the text now, and I have a much more nuanced view of the concept of a good or a bad person.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Maybe there are elements of Boromir's personality that I see uncomfortably reflected in myself, and that's what makes me have more sympathy for him as a character now. But it's heartbreaking for me to see him kind of fall prey to the lesser demons of his nature, or whatever else you want to call it. Even though I know what's coming, it's still really disappointing to read his altercation with Frodo and hear him say out loud the things that he clearly has been struggling with internally for so long.
Yeah, I think think you're right. I think that he loses himself in that moment a little bit. And I think that just because somebody says something out loud doesn't mean that they believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we have this sense, I think, that like everything you put into words or something, it must be something that you like fully believe. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think sometimes you get overwhelmed by emotion or whatever. And like in this case, like literally like the power of like
the Dark Lord Sauron.
Yeah. Like a demon or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that like he has struggled and struggled and struggled, and then in this moment it breaks free, you know.
And he even says, a madness took me.
Exactly.
But it's past now. And he begs Frodo to come back. And I think when he returns to the company, which, you know, we'll get to, I guess we work through the text, but there's this really chilling line where Aragorn says, "Where have you been, Boromir?" And it had, like in this reading especially, it gave me chills. It was like this, almost like a Shakespearean line, like et tu, Brute, like the simplicity of the, like in that one line, you can see Aragorn kind of putting the pieces together, where he's like, okay, I don't know exactly what you've done, but I know that you've made a huge mistake, and I can see the shame in your face. Mm-hmm. And I don't know like what part you've played in this, you know, breaking of this fellowship yet, but like, you know, do everything that you can to put it right. But that simple line, like, "Where have you been, Boromir?" really, I think it's got this quality of like, would you betray me with a kiss?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's not just where have you been physically, it's like who have you been and what have you done all together. Like where has yourself been?
Yeah.
You know, and he does lose his grip on the fullness of who he is, and madness, he sort of is taken over by some force, some other force within him or outside of himself, maybe both.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is a tragic moment for him. Well, and for the company too, you know, for them not to have a moment to like say goodbye.
Yeah. They're never all in the same place again. Mm-hmm. And the breaking of the fellowship, it's not just the sundering of the party. It's not just the fact that the party is never in the same place again, but it's a break of trust.
Yeah, right.
Where like just a short time ago, each of them were given a choice to go their own way, and each of them chose to not break fellowship. And all of them had said something along the lines of like, you know, everyone else might betray you, but not me. Mm-hmm. And it's got this like, almost like Last Supper kind of quality to it, where it's like, you know, we as the readers know that, you know, this has been foreshadowing. Boromir's fall has been foreshadowed really since the Council of Elrond. Like, we've known that this was a possibility, but it doesn't make it any less disappointing when it actually happens. And to hear the things that Boromir says just sounds so like just garish and ugly coming out of his mouth. And it's like, you know, I do think this is like a truly honest and noble person, and to see him fall to such depths is really emotional and sad for me. And yeah, every time I read it, I catch myself. It's kind of similar to Gandalf's fall in Moria. Like, it hits me every time, where it's like, I know it's coming, but I'm still wishing that it didn't have to be this way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm wishing that I remembered a time when I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't remember what that was like the first time that I, you know, read this.
No.
And so, but you're right that the tragedy of it, I think, remains pretty strong. And what he says and the anger he expresses, you know, there are definitely times in my life where I've kind of lost my grip, my full control over my anger.
Yeah.
And you just sort of like, your prefrontal cortex just turns off, and you're just like an animal in a way.
You're shocked by the things that are coming out of your own mouth.
Yeah, you're like, whoa. And then you think about what you said, and it's like, yikes, why did I say those things?
Yeah.
And that shame hits very fast. I mean, Boromir literally falls on his face,
Yeah.
And that kind of shocks him out of it.
Yeah.
And then that full weight of the shame just falls on him, and that's what takes him back to Aragorn and the rest of the party. But should we dive into the text?
Yeah. So we left last chapter with the choice, the debate. Do we go east? Do we go west? And I don't know about you, but I found myself, especially this reading, kind of like taking Sam's position, where I'm just like, why are we even questioning whether we should go to Minas Tirith? Like, why is that even such a point of debate? Like, we settled this back at the Council of Elrond. Like, it is not an option to strike out from Minas Tirith with strength. It is not an option.
Right.
Like, the only road that has ever really been on the table is to go to Mordor directly. And whether all of them go or not, like, this, like, I think Gandalf's fall really shook them in their confidence. Whereas we left the Council of Elrond with this really clear mandate of, like, the Hobbit walks to the cracks of doom, and if he fails, he fails. But that is the only option. Like, that is the quest. And so the debate, I think, is really like they know, I think that in their hearts, they know that they really can't do that.
Yeah. I think it's about fear, right? I mean,
yeah.
And Frodo gives voice to some of that in his own self, that he knows what he needs to do, but he's afraid.
Yeah.
And Sam, I mean, it's interesting that Sam is like the person at the council who he's just eavesdropping.
Yeah.
Similar to, I mean, not dissimilar, I guess, to what he was doing.
The Council of Elrond.
Well, no, but like, so at the Council of Elrond, he's eavesdropping, but he's also eavesdropping at Bag End,
You're so right.
And he just listens. He's just this real listener.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have, we talked a couple weeks ago about how Sam doesn't necessarily have a strong way with words, but he can listen, and he's got discernment.
Plain Hobbit sense.
So he listened to that whole debate, and he realized, well, yeah, this is what this has come down to. And even in this moment, Frodo says that he needs to go off and be alone, which kind of reminded me of all the times in the Gospels when, Jesus retreats, tries to get away from everybody, and then 1,000 people show up and like ask for fish and bread or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always think those are so funny. He just can never get away to himself. But then Sam says, plain as a pikestaff it is, but it's no good, Sam Gamgee, putting in his spoke just now.
Yeah, he's like here I am with all these lords, and upper class people. Nobody's asking me about my opinion.
Yeah. And he knows, not only does he have an opinion, it's an opinion based on the wisdom of like someone like Elrond.
Yeah.
And Gandalf, and he knows Frodo, and he knows what Frodo's going to do.
Yeah.
So he's like, all this sitting around is going off to think, in the hills is worthless.
Yeah.
He's like, the decision is made. We know what we need to do. We should just do it.
Yeah.
And I kind of think maybe Boromir would normally be that kind of guy, actually.
If he was living into his best version of himself, I think you're right. Like an honorable person.
Exactly.
Who knows his mandate. He's
so afraid for his people, and then affected, kind of sick. There's like this sickness that's, the ring is casting on him. And so, yes, but Sam is he still has that discernment and sort of simplicity to him, where he can just say, like, the right thing to do is right here in front of us. We just need to choose it.
Let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So they spend the night in an uneasy place. I mean, they've really just like barely gotten away from these orcs who are following them on the eastern shore. Aragorn comes to Frodo, who's keeping watch, and he's like, why don't you pull out Sting and like just kind of see if that beacon is glowing. And he pulls it out, and sure enough, it's faintly glowing blue. And he's like, I got a bad feeling about what's coming before us, but why don't you sleep and I'll keep watch. Hopefully they're not on this side of the shore. Hopefully they're, or if they are, then it's just, a small number of scouts or whatever, but you get some rest. Basically because tomorrow we have to make this decision that we've been kicking down the road for, the last 3 chapters. Mm-hmm. And Aragorn calls the company together and he says, the day has come at last, the day of choice which we have long delayed. What shall now become of our company that has traveled so far in fellowship? Shall we turn west with Boromir and go to the wars of Gondor, or turn east to the fear and shadow? Or shall we break our fellowship and go this way and that, as each may choose? Whatever we do must be done soon. We cannot halt here. The enemy is on the eastern shore, we know, but I fear the orcs may already be on this side of the water. Hmm. No one speaks a word or moves, and Aragorn looks to Frodo and he says, you are the ring bearer. I fear that this burden is laid upon you. Your own way alone you can choose. In this matter I cannot advise you. Such is your fate. So he lays it on Frodo.
There's a double meaning there, right? The burden is laid upon you.
Yeah, the burden of choice.
He's carrying the ring as a burden, right?
Yeah.
And it not only gets heavier the closer they get to Mordor. And he does have to choose, and I think it's been clear that Frodo has to be the leader in this moment for a long time.
Yeah.
They probably should have asked Frodo, should we go under the mountain or over the mountain? Maybe he should have been choosing all along. He's the sort of fated person here. And so maybe there's some power in that or something.
And there have been several times. I mean, you mentioned they probably should have asked, do we go over or under the mountain? Like when they come back down the mountain, they're essentially like, oh, correct me if I'm misremembering this now.
Go ahead.
Don't they ask Frodo what to do next? And he's like, we should sleep on it, and hopefully Gandalf will get more votes in the morning. Yes,
that is what happens.
So like, there's been several times when
they do ask him. Wow, that I totally didn't remember that, but you're right. Yeah,
it's kind of a similar moment here where it's like, yeah, like at the end of the day, like Frodo is not the one like walking in front of the train with his sword out, like. Aragorn and Gandalf held that role. But at the end of the day, Frodo, he's like the prime minister of the group. Like at the end of the day, like his choice, he's the one who's appointed to make the decisions, even if he's not the one who's, the strongest.
Right.
He ultimately is given like a lot of sway.
Gosh, that's fascinating. I didn't track that back that far.
And because he is the ring bearer, like he's not the leader of the company, but at the end of the day, he's the one who has been entrusted with the burden. And so the burden of the choice is on him to make the final decision. And he says, the burden is heavy. Give me an hour longer and I will speak. Let me be alone. We talked about how this has like echoes in the story of the Last Supper. Jesus retreating to the Mount of Olives to pray. He's basically saying like, let me go be alone for a while. I'm going to literally walk up this ancient hill where this seat of seeing is. And I need to contemplate this alone because like, this is my choice. And that's what he does. He leaves the company for, an appointed hour. And that's when it all goes wrong.
If you're playing the drinking game where which one of the hosts will cry first, then you can drink because I'm just overwhelmed by it right now. By his... I I don't know. To like hold the fate of like all these people in your hands that way.
Yeah.
And then to literally be carrying this like evil around your neck.
Yeah.
At the same time is, you know, you were talking about sort of seeing from Sam's perspective. I think I'm kind of in Sam's perspective right now where, you know, I'm watching this person who I love.
Yeah.
And you can see why Sam is so frustrated.
Yeah.
He's like, nobody's helping Frodo.
Yeah.
But also nobody can help Frodo.
No.
Which I think is what Aragorn is saying here. He's like, the burden is yours. I can't help you make the choice. If Gandalf was here, maybe he would help you make the choice, but he's not. So
yeah,
this is what we're stuck with. And yeah, so it makes a lot of sense that Frodo, you know, goes for a walk, so to speak.
And it says that like he walks up and he's in this reflective mood where he is remembering everything that has happened since Bilbo left the Shire. Like he's reflecting on everything that, and so like, not just like since Bilbo left the Shire, I think at the beginning of this book, but maybe even like since Bilbo left the Shire, like, you know, like the pebble falling down the mountain that has become an avalanche up to this point started before Frodo was even born.
Yeah. He's reflecting on his whole life in a way.
Yeah. In the life of his mentor and friend. And now it's like, he's come to a literal crossroads where he's like essentially seeking like divine insight into what to do.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't want to have to make the choice. Like the choice is laid on him. And it's like, you know, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's like, you know, if there's any way for this cup to pass from me and I not drink from it, then like, you know, but not my will, but thine be done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the moment when he senses that somebody is behind him. He has a feeling that there were unfriendly eyes upon him, and he turns around and he's relieved to see Boromir standing there, and he's smiling. He says, "I was afraid for you, Frodo. If Aragorn is right and the orcs are near, then none of us should wander alone. You least of all. So much depends on you."
Is that true? I was afraid for you. I wrote next to his face was smiling and kind. I wrote, "All that glitters is not gold." Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is he coming to actually check on Frodo?
No. I think he's coming either to sway Frodo without the others there to argue with him. So to use the opportunity to convince Frodo to come with him, or to take the ring by force. And I don't know if he knows which of those that he's doing. Maybe he's an honorable enough person that he doesn't ever think I would take it by force.
Yeah. I want to take the like most charitable possible reading here and say that he did want to convince Frodo, but he didn't plan to take the ring.
No.
But once he sort of gets a lather up,
yeah,
and the ring is having that effect on him,
yeah,
that's where it becomes. That's where like the madness comes in.
Yeah. He says, "While there are so many, all speech becomes a debate without end. But two together may perhaps find wisdom." And Frodo says, "You are kind. But I do not think that any speech will help me. For I know what I should do, but I'm afraid of doing it, Boromir. Afraid." So Frodo, like Sam, he knows what's up.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that he has to go east. The Western Road is not actually even an option for him. And Boromir says, "Are you sure that you do not suffer needlessly? I wish to help you. You need counsel in your hard choice. Will you not take mine?" He says, "I think I already know what counsel you would give, Boromir, and it would seem like wisdom, but for the warning in my heart." And that is what triggers Boromir's true feelings coming out. Like, that's when the smile fades, and he becomes angry. Just warning. Warning against what?
You know, just to zoom out for 1 second.
Yeah.
But it just occurs to me, and it occurred to me as I was reading earlier too, I think I sent you a text and said, I wonder how many times what the draft history of this is.
Yeah.
Because it seems like something he must have rewritten over and over and over again and edited down and edited down, because it's just like crystallizes, so much of what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's some of the tightest dialogue in the entire book.
Yeah, there's not a single word you could leave out of this. It's so tight.
Yeah.
But you're right, like that is that place where Boromir, that's where his like anger trips.
Yeah.
Where he says warning against what?
And he says it sharply. You can see you can almost like see his face fall from a smile into a scowl. Like you can feel the shift in the flavor of their conversation. The temperature just goes through the roof immediately.
Yeah, because the ring wants to go to Minas Tirith.
Yes.
That'd be perfect. But to be warned against that, and as Frodo says, that would be a delay to go that way.
Yeah.
And that, that seems easier. It would be great to go do something. I'm not afraid of that way, but maybe it's my fear that's showing me what the right way is.
One thing that strikes me as I'm kind of reading through this dialogue here is all of us have had the experience of talking to someone who is clearly not in their right mind, whose like faculties are not fully present to them. And you can hear them trying to convince you that they are not saying what they clearly are saying.
Mm-hmm.
He has this like initial like break in his temper where he says like warning against what? He says it sharply, but then he says like the ring, it's such a small thing.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's just a small thing. I see.
And I only got a glimpse of it.
That's what Sauron says to the dwarves. I'm just looking for a small thing.
A little trinket.
Yeah.
That the Dark Lord fancies. He says, I only saw it for just a second, just an instant in the house of Elrond. Could I not just like have a look at it? His heart goes cold. Frodo's heart goes cold, and he sees a strange gleam in Boromir's eyes. And it's like he wants it so much, and he says like, no, it's best, Boromir, that it remain hidden. Mm-hmm. He's very diplomatic here. And Boromir's like, oh, I care not.
Yeah, right. That's why we're having this conversation, because you don't care. Yeah.
And that's, I think, when Boromir really starts to break. He starts like pacing back and forth as he walks about impatiently. And he's like, we've got all these elves and these half-elves and these wizards. Yet often I doubt if they are wise and not merely timid. True-hearted men, they would not be corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
We do not desire the power of wizard lords, only the strength to defend ourselves, strength in a just cause.
It's interesting that he says all this. He says, if the ring lasts, if it were here with us, surely if it was here with us, then because it's not in the hands of the enemy, we must be able to control it. Yeah. And this is coming just a couple days after Galadriel turned it down.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody with a lot more strength and wisdom than Boromir.
Yeah.
And so Frodo's got to be like, this is ridiculous,
Yeah.
He's never going to be convinced that it ought to be used, and go to Minas Tirith.
He even says like, were you not at the council, Boromir?
Yeah. And certainly not by Boromir. And so, yeah, I think, Galadriel really has cast some kind of like protection around Frodo in this, that he's not going to make the wrong choice. Because he's already seen Galadriel make such a wise choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, the racism comes out here. Elves, half-elves, wizards. And then he even says, but each to his own kind.
Yeah.
Which is so rotten. True-hearted men, they won't be corrupted, as you said.
But they would. And they have.
Exactly. They wouldn't have, and it's literally happening right now in front of Frodo's face.
And this is where the ring-induced monologue that we keep mentioning, like he is, he's starting to say things out loud that he shouldn't say, and they're clearly wrong. I mean, he says, the ring would give me power of command, how I would drive the hosts of Mordor, and all men would flock to my banner.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen.
Yeah, right.
you can hear the grandiosity coming out. And
that's the word for it, for sure.
He starts to see himself as a great general, calling to himself alliances, achieving glorious victories. Sees himself casting down Mordor, and himself becoming a mighty king, benevolent and wise. Boromir is never going to become king.
No.
He is not the heir of Gondor. He is supposed to be the steward. And so that twisting of his own view of his capabilities, that's why we call it, or why Professor Corey Olsen calls it a ring-induced monologue, right. Because it's a delusion of your own capabilities. It's like you're deluded in your own station.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting. He's very dismissive of wizards and elves and half elves, but he also says, "I am a true man, neither thief nor tracker."
Yeah. I wondered if that was a little callback to Bilbo.
Ooh, I like that. Bilbo is the thief,
and Aragorn's the tracker.
But guess what? That tracker is your sovereign.
Right.
You owe him your allegiance.
Right.
And if anybody left in the company could wield the ring, it would be Aragorn, but Aragorn won't. If anybody has claim to the ring, it's the Númenóreans. And Boromir even says such. He says, essentially, if anybody would have a claim to it, it wouldn't be halflings, it would be the Númenóreans.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, guess what, pal? You got one in your company. And you may think he's a tracker, but he's not.
Right. Which everybody else in the company knows.
Yeah.
Boromir seems to be the only person who can't see that.
And there's nothing as disappointing as someone who is a valiant, honest, true person being so jealous that he can't see the good qualities in other people. Mm-hmm. Whether that's Sauron not thinking that Radagast was worthy of his time, or Sauron thinking that Gandalf was a fool, not seeing his true qualities. Boromir has the same inflated sense of ego that prevents him from seeing things the way they really are.
Yep.
So much so that he calls Aragorn a tracker. And that's when he starts to call him a fool. He starts to get openly angry. He says, "Would you not lend me the ring?" And Frodo's like, "No. The council gave it to me to bear, not you." And that's when he starts to say, "Fool, obstinate fool, running willfully to death and ruining our cause. It is not yours save by an unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should have been mine. Give it to me." Now it's it's naked.
Just to back up for 1 sec.
Yeah.
Frodo says that he sees clearly. He says, "I'm just simply afraid.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to have heard you speak so fully. My mind is clearer now." And I think there's a way in which, you've talked about, there's a simplicity to evil for Tolkien, where evil leads to its own downfall.
Always.
Right? And this ring-induced monologue,
yeah.
Again, if Boromir was a little more subtle here, maybe he even has a chance to steal the ring, but he's so enraged, and he's in this monologue and so outside of himself.
Yeah.
Frodo's never going to trust him to get close to him.
No.
Maybe ever again.
No.
So the fact that the ring has so much power over Boromir in this moment means that Frodo's never going to, certainly never going to, has stopped listening, essentially, because Boromir's not saying anything that's, close to true.
Yeah.
And so, once again, evil
undoes itself.
Its effect on Boromir undoes itself.
And it leads to a physical change in Boromir's appearance.
Yeah.
That really reminded me of the moment in Rivendell when Bilbo asks to see the ring and Frodo tells him no. Mm-hmm. And Bilbo becomes angry and it says his face was changed. This line here, his fair and pleasant face was hideously changed. A raging fire was in his eyes. So his like inner ugliness has this like physical mirroring in his appearance. You know, this line I think is probably his lowest point here. He says, "You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say I was too strong for you and took it by force. For I am too strong for you, halfling."
Yeah, that physical threat really, I mean, there's nothing Frodo can do but put the ring on and escape.
And that's what he does. Miserable trickster, he says.
Yeah, he just says things about Frodo that are so... I don't think Boromir ever believed this about Frodo. You will take the ring to Sauron and sell us all. You've only waited your chance to leave us in the lurch. Then he curses Frodo and all halflings to death and darkness. Ugh.
It's so gross.
But then he falls on his face.
And he catches his foot on a stone, falls on his face, and begins to weep.
That's such a powerful image, him falling over like that. Just, he's embarrassed himself with his words, and then he, to just like trip like that is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
And for him to like trip over onto his face and then to be like, oh God, what have I done? What have I said?
But Frodo makes his way to the seat of seeing, Amon Hen, the hill of the eye of the men of Numenor. And with the ring on his finger, sitting in this ancient high place on this seat of stone, he has these terrifying images that really, they remind me a lot of his dream sequences that we are given, some insight into several times in this volume. In Fellowship of the Ring, we get several descriptions of his dreams, but he's given a vision of basically all of Middle Earth. I mean, he sees the misty mountains crawling like anthills with orcs issuing out of 1,000 holes. He sees the strife of the elves against evil, fell beasts in Mirkwood. He sees the land of the Beornings aflame. He sees the horsemen of Rohan galloping, wolves pouring from Isengard. And then he sees Minas Tirith, a great fortress set with high walls and glittering battlements. And he has a quick moment of hope before he sees the land of Mordor. And that's the bit that we started the episode with, this vision of Barad-dûr.
I love that the way Tolkien puts this when he sees Minas Tirith, but then against Minas Tirith was set another fortress, greater and more strong.
Yeah.
More strong really catches your attention.
Yeah.
Greater, he doesn't say greater and stronger.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hard to say. It's like even hard to say out loud, but greater and more strong.
Yeah.
And then he just sees more and more of Mordor revealed to him, the bridges of Osgiliath, the grinning gates of Minas Morgul, and the haunted mountains. It looked upon the Gorgoroth, all these like awesome names for things that Tolkien gives things.
Yes.
And a vision of the land of Mordor. Darkness lay there under the sun. And even there's like a great reek rising.
A great reek rising.
It stinks, and it's these vapors and smoke, and
it's a moment of clarity that, yes, Minas Tirith is strong. There's still strength in men.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put that tower against the tower of Barad-dûr, all hope leaves you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see that Barad-dûr is immeasurably strong. So if he had made the decision to go with Boromir, it would have been a folly.
Yeah.
There's no way they could stand up to it with, like, physical strength, with military strength. It would have been the end of the quest if he had gone west. And then we get this spiritual warfare that starts to happen here. It says, and suddenly he felt the eye, with a capital E. There was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. This eye is searching for him. He knows that it's looking for him. And he hears himself crying, never, never. Or was it, verily I come to you? He could not tell. And then we get the introduction of a voice that I think all of us have missed.
Yeah.
Take it off. Take it off, fool. Take it off. Take off the ring. This voice has to be Gandalf, right?
Yeah, the word fool, capitalized as it is.
Yeah, it gives it away. That's Gandalf.
Take it off. Take it off, fool. Take it off. Yeah, it's definitely Gandalf. Real quick aside regarding, this seat that he's on.
Yeah.
He's got the ring on. I don't think that there's a sense actually in the book that the ring or putting on the ring necessarily like makes you glow like a beacon, to the Nazgul or to Sauron.
No.
But there is some power in the seat that he's on.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a lens where
Yeah.
he can see these things, the land of the Bjornings on fire and all that kind of stuff.
Stuff that he would not be able to see with his physical eyes.
Yeah,
He's
so
able
it's
to
like
see.
it's like a spiritual telescope or something. Right?
I think that's a great way to put it. Like, the seed itself is naturally imbued with this spiritual power. That's why they call it the seed of seeing.
Right.
And it's in a high place.
Right.
And so you're spiritually elevated as much as you are physically elevated.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the ring itself, by him putting it on, I think the metaphor you just used of the lens is a great metaphor, because, like, yeah, you add this lens to this already spiritually powerful place, and it acts like a telescope that allows you to have these visions of the surrounding area.
But it also works the other direction.
Yeah.
And so maybe in the same way that we got a full vision of the eye in the Mirror of Galadriel.
Yeah.
Searching and searching. And this is even more powerful, that like Sauron can kind of see through the lens the other direction.
Yeah.
And know that, Frodo's reaching out spiritually.
Yeah.
And Sauron's already constantly reaching out spiritually, and he can see him.
It says very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. So there's a sense that he's like in this like really dangerous place. And I think, you compared it to the Mirror of Galadriel, which I think is a perfect comparison. Even using the glass metaphor, we have this mirror, and it's refracted in such a way that, those spiritual beings can see through it both directions. The other thing to compare it to, I think, would be the Palantir.
Yeah, I think so too.
Pippin looks into the Palantir, and the Dark Lord is looking through the other side.
Right.
Denethor looks into the Palantir, and he's striving with the Dark Lord. We're getting into Return of the King territory here, so I won't talk about it too long. But Denethor's madness comes from seeing exactly what Frodo sees now. The strength of Barad-dûr is so strong and so overwhelming that Denethor knows there's no way they could defeat them in battle. And so that's when all hope leaves him, and he just resigns himself to an early death.
Right.
Frodo, partly because of the intercession of this other, we have the striving of the eye, Frodo in the middle, and then it's just called the voice. And without that intercession of that voice, I think, he may have kind of tarried too long in this dangerous junction of the spiritual and the physical realm.
I think Gandalf gets some like extra power. He's like leveled up, right? Because
Absolutely.
of he's sacrificed himself to the Balrog.
Absolutely.
And it's because it says that Frodo felt that there were two powers striving in him,
Yeah.
and that he was perfectly balanced between their piercing points. So for Gandalf to perfectly balance Sauron in this moment, I don't think he could quite. He wasn't really on that level as Gandalf the Grey.
No.
And I guess we don't know yet whether, Gandalf has fully kind of taken on sort of a new incarnation yet. But Frodo is tormented between these two huge powers.
Yeah. He's so small that he kind of can't. There's this sense that like he's in a space that he's not spiritually capable of existing in for long.
But I love this. We've talked about Boromir kind of forgetting himself, losing himself. But Frodo has the opposite experience here. Suddenly he was aware of himself again. Yeah. Frodo, neither voice nor the eye, free to choose.
Yes.
And he just has an instant to choose, and he takes off the ring. And that's like the spiritual power of the hobbits.
Yeah.
Is to just be simple hobbits.
Yes.
And so he has this agency or this will that he, even though he's not as powerful as Gandalf and he's not as powerful as Sauron, he still has a powerful choice to make, which is to take off the ring in this moment. Then it says that he was kneeling in clear sunlight before the high seat.
Yeah.
And the shadow that's kind of searching for him just passes away.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it becomes this it's not like there's storm clouds, you know? It's like a sunny day. He's in the woods. It's probably beautiful.
Yeah.
And he's just gone through this horrible, like you said, spiritual warfare, this boxing match, between Gandalf and Sauron.
Yeah. He's caught between a hammer and an anvil.
Yeah. And he just is I'm just going to step back.
Yeah. But that's what allows him to make that choice.
Right.
And he does choose. He says, I'll go alone.
And even though he's weary, it says his will was firm and his heart lighter.
Yeah.
Wow. That somehow, having made the choice, finally, because he's made the right choice, because he's made the choice that's right for him and for the, fate of the whatever world.
Yeah.
There's this lightness. Yeah. And he has a freedom to do what he needs to do.
He's like, I can't trust. Clearly, Boromir has already fallen to evil. And those that I could trust, Merry and Pippin and Sam and Strider. Those I know I could fully trust, but I couldn't ask him to go with me.
Too dear to me. Yeah.
And so that's when he resigns himself. And that is, that's the moment that the fellowship is broken, I think. That's the moment when the company, at least, has served its purpose. One thing that I noticed, I think I noticed this for the first time when we first read this together over the summer last, was that usually we refer to the group as the fellowship, because the title of the book is The Fellowship of the Ring.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really refer to themselves as the fellowship that often. More often they refer to themselves as the company.
The company. Yeah, interesting.
But there is a fellowship among the company.
Right.
And that fellowship got Frodo to this point, but now it served its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why this chapter isn't called The Breaking of the Company. It's called The Breaking of the Fellowship.
Yeah.
Boromir's break in trust.
Yeah, that piece is really powerful for me. That Boromir broke his part of the fellowship by breaking that trust.
It was almost like that was a crack in the fellowship, and now Frodo is kind of grabbing two ends of it and breaking it over his knee. He's like, that's the real breaking. When he's like, I'm going to go off on my own. But the rest of the company, they're sitting around oblivious to everything that's going on. I do think we should probably not spend too much time talking about, all the other plans that they're making kind of while they're oblivious to the fact that all of their plans that they're making right now are completely pointless because they don't know what Boromir has just done.
Mm-hmm.
Aragorn is essentially like, I think I'll send Boromir off and then, it'll be like me, Frodo, Sam, because Sam would never let, Frodo go off without him. And then maybe Legolas or Gimli. He's kind of putting together his like B team. We probably can't all go. So I'll send Meriadoc and Peregrine off with Boromir to Minas Tirith, and then, either Legolas or Gimli or both will come with us and we'll kind of strike out from this point. All that's just completely useless because they don't know that Boromir has broken trust like this. Well,
and Aragorn also, Mary's like, we're not leaving Frodo.
Yeah, fuck you.
Pippin and I always intended to go wherever he went. And we want him to do, we wish that he would go to Minas Tirith, but, he's probably not going to do that. So, if we can't stop him, we got to go with him. And they've been telling him that for, pages and pages and pages.
But Sam is wise. He is, in so many ways, the least equipped person in the entire company.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's interesting. He says, Mr. Frodo knows he's got to find the cracks of doom if he can. But he's afraid. Now it's come to the point he's just plain terrified.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the trouble is. Of course, he's had a bit of schooling, so to speak. We all have since we left home. Or he'd be so terrified he'd just fling the ring in the river and bolt. But he's still too frightened to start. And he isn't worrying about us either, whether we'll go along with him or no. If he screws himself up to go, he'll go alone. Mark my words. We're going to have trouble when he comes back. So he's the only one that has like a inkling of what Frodo is actually thinking. And he guesses right away. He's like, yep, Frodo's going to decide to go on his own. I mean, he just did it a page and a half ago.
Yeah, he sees it perfectly.
After Sam's insight, they essentially say, like, all right, well, whatever we're going to do, like, time is ticking. We got to get moving. The hour that we said that we'd give Frodo to go off and make his choice is long gone. And so, we need to make a decision. And that's, like, the moment that Boromir shows up.
Right.
And that's where we get this line again. I mean, I don't know why I find it so moving. Where have you been, Boromir? Have you seen Frodo?
Mm.
And he responds, yes and no. He can't bring himself to lie because deep down he's still an honorable person.
Yeah.
But he doesn't tell the whole truth. He admits to them, he says that he had tried to urge him to go to Minas Tirith, but then he grew angry and he vanished. So he doesn't tell the whole truth. But the hobbits are having none of this. They're like, I don't know what this guy just did, but something is really fishy about this, and we got to find Frodo. And like all the hobbits bolt.
They're sort of like running around like like ants or something,
Yeah. They're like, what? Like, what do you mean he vanished? And they're like, how long ago was that? And he's like, oh, it may have been an hour ago. And they're like, an hour? Like there are orcs about. Like what are we doing? And they all just like bolt off in different directions. And that's when everything really just, devolves into panic. And they all run off in different directions, never to be seen in the same place again. It says a sudden panic or madness seemed to have fallen on the company.
Aragorn sort of starts to, try to put them into pairs and things like that. And
it's beyond.
Nobody's listening. Nobody can hear him.
And so he says to Boromir, he's like, hey, like, we're all going to be scattered and lost. Like, I don't know, what part that you have played in this mischief, but help now. Go after those two young hobbits and guard them at the least, even if you cannot find Frodo. And so that's kind of his like final orders to Boromir.
Yeah, Aragorn sort of gives Boromir a chance to repent.
Yeah.
In that way. He's like, I don't know what you did, but you have a chance to do something right now. So take the chance to do it now.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
And he does.
He's, Aragorn doesn't know exactly what happened, but he's certain that something really bad happened.
Yeah.
And even in this moment, he still sees Boromir's character, his honor, his truthfulness, and he knows that's there, which is a lot more than I can say, because you said at the beginning of this recording, like, I think we like Boromir, and I was like, I don't know if I do. But this is not a matter of liking for Aragorn. It's a matter of seeing, like, who a person is and calling them to their, like, the fullness of that, which is what Gandalf does too, I think.
Yeah.
And so, a little lesson there in, I don't know, leadership or character or something from Aragorn.
They never count the good characters in Lord of the Rings. Never miss an opportunity to give someone who has made horrendous mistakes a chance at repentance and redemption, ever.
Yeah. Yep.
Whether it's Gandalf, like, offering Sauron a chance to join them. He says, you've been deep in the enemy's council. Whether it's refusing to have Grima Wormtongue executed once his role was revealed in Rohan. Gandalf saying, like, don't be so quick to deal out death and judgment to Gollum. Again and again and again, people are given a chance at repentance. And this happens, like, basically the worst thing that Boromir ever did happened an hour ago. And Aragorn is already...
Yeah, offering him a chance. Yeah. I love this little conversation that Sam has to himself, because he tries to follow Aragorn, as, Aragorn said, follow me, Sam.
Yeah.
And he just can't keep up, which is, totally natural. Strider, the ranger, they called him Longshanks.
I was going to say he's Longshanks, yeah.
So he's moving fast. And he's like a magical man, right? He's like not just a person. He's like a Númenorian super person.
Yeah, but he says, I'm going to the seat of Amon Hen. Like, he intuits correctly.
Yeah. Where
Frodo is going. He's like, I'm going to go to that place, the seat of Amon Hen, to see what may be seen.
But Sam... Whoa, Sam Gamgee, he said aloud. Yeah. Your legs are too short, so use your head. And then he thinks it through. What would Frodo do? Boromir didn't lie. That's not his way. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But he didn't tell us everything. Something scared Frodo, and then what did he do? And he thinks it through as if he were Frodo.
And he's like, he would go for the boats. He'd go off on his own. And as he gets to the place where the boats are, he sees a boat being dragged by an invisible person into the water.
Sliding down the bank all by itself.
Coming, Mr. Frodo! Coming, said Sam. And he flung himself, misses the boat by a yard.
This is a guy who's scared of the water.
Jumps into the cold, swift-moving water and immediately begins to drown. He is not letting Frodo get away from him.
Frodo grabs him by the hair and pulls him up. I love that.
Up you come, Sam, my lad. Take my hand.
Take my hand.
Save me, Mr. Frodo. I'm drowned. I can't see your hand. Yeah, 'cause he's got the ring on. He's invisible. He can't see his hand to grab it. He's like, grab my hand. He's like, what
That's
hand?
right. That's right. Here it is. Don't pinch, lad. I won't let you go. Oh, so funny.
Of all the confounded nuisances, you are the worst, Sam, he said. Oh, Mr. Frodo, that's hard. That's hard. Trying to go without me and all. If I hadn't guessed right, where would you be? Safely on my way.
Safely, said Sam. All alone and without me to help you? I couldn't have borne it. It'd have been the death of me. Oh, it sure would have, too. Poor Sam.
But I am going to Mordor. I know that well enough, Mr. Frodo. Of course you are. And I'm coming with you.
Oh, that's great. But Frodo says, well, it says that a sudden warmth and gladness touched Frodo's heart. Sam runs off and gets his stuff. So he's got food and gear and all that. But it says that Sam had prepared it all before.
Yeah, so he knew.
I thought we should be off today, so he can just pick up his pack and go. And it says that he grabbed a spare blanket and some extra packages of food.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that logistical mind, of Tolkien.
So Frodo and Sam set off on the last stage of the quest together. At length they came to land again upon the southern slopes of Amon. There they found a shelving shore, and they drew the boat out high above the water, and hid it as well as they could behind a great boulder. Then, shouldering their burdens, they set off, seeking a path that would bring them over the gray hills of the Amon Will and down into the land of shadow.
So after this episode, we're going to take a break, just 4 weeks, and we'll be back with The Two Towers.
And so we'll start with the second volume, The Two Towers, Book 3, Chapter 1, The Departure of Boromir.
If you want to help us out, as always, share the podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. You can follow us in most of the places where you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Of course, you can also subscribe and follow us on YouTube. Leave a review in places where it's possible to leave a review. That helps the podcast out. You can visit waywardwizards.com for more info, or contact us at info@waywardwizards.com.
And so we leave this chapter, like Frodo and Sam, heading into the land of Mordor. But remember, just like them, it's clear that we were meant to go together. See you next time.
See you next time.